The platform concourse smelled of cold metal and dampness trapped between its slabs. At that hour, the wind came down from the office towers and slipped through coats. The public thermal station was a canopy of pale canvas with a simple signage, a torso, 2 arms, and a clock. At the entrance, a digital stopwatch displayed the turns, and the line moved forward. Travis paused off to the side as he waited for his train. Under his sleeve, he still wore the corporate access wristband. On his other wrist, the bracelet with the protocol app, containing a second life, perfectly in order. He kept his jacket open despite the air, his shift in the document management department, where the heating was comfortable for species that couldn't retain warmth and an oven for humans had ended not long ago. Under the canopy, there were 2 Vrikasari on duty. They were huge even by their species standards, bipedal canines with dense fur, broad shoulders, a presence that radiated security. They wore service vests with ID plates and a small camera. Then, his bracelet vibrated. The notification carried no name for the platform's privacy. Only a sober tag. Private request. Level C. The fee for the service hit him in the gut. It was the kind of pay that justified breaking routine, if only because it brought financial peace for the next month. He slid a finger across the hologram, read the essentials, address, time window, conditions, and closed it, still without making a decision. He looked up, this time toward the volunteer. A long-snouted female flexed her legs, crouched, and opened her arms to receive a Vel Run, who shuffled toward her with clumsy steps. His pale mottled skin, scales gleaming with moisture, and its external gills quivered as its slimy hands brushed her fur. "All right, just a quick one, right?" the brigade member said in a deep voice. The other Xeno nodded and leaped into the embrace. She sealed the contract as if it weren't just a gesture, but a technique learned and applied with rigor. Her vest gave off the faintest buzz. On the forearm panel and the stopwatch at the entrance, the time locked at 02 minutes. Thanks to the dark fur that stored and spread heat like a living blanket, the Vel Run stopped trembling. "I'm in your debt," it murmured. The volunteer dipped her muzzle in a nod and let it go carefully, opening her arms instead of pushing. "Come back if your temperature drops again," she told the Xeno as it left the tent, while the next one was already approaching her. The train arrived with a low whistle. Travis got on amid shoulders and tails, instinctively dodging the heavy sway of a Siskathari that turned at the last second so it wouldn't sweep anyone aside. The car smelled of detergent, industrial air freshener, and wet fur. The ceiling screen showed the line map, with a blue arrow moving toward the residential district, and beneath it, a notice in several languages. Interior temperature adjusted, with priority for ectothermic species. 2 seats down, a Xeno kept his hands hidden inside a thermal blanket. Across from it, a human couple shared earbuds and talked about shifts, rent, and the latest fare hike. The car crossed a covered skywalk, and for a second, you caught a side view of another thermal station embedded in a pedestrian corridor. Travis watched it go by like you watched something ordinary, though it wasn't always like that, or so his grandfather said. He used to tell it the way it had been told to him. It didn't start with laws or with the new neighbor. Back in the days of the first human settlement on this colony planet, a human walked out of an improvised bar with lips purple from the cold, smiling because of the alcohol. 2 streets later, they surrounded him. They were settlers like anyone else, ectothermic species who worked, paid taxes, and froze because of their biology. One pressed in at his shoulder, another took his hand, just for a moment, they said, and at first it was clumsy closeness, until it stopped being an innocuous gesture. A claw pulled too hard, the human tried to pull away. Someone else's tail tightened around his neck, and the group told him, "Don't exaggerate. Humans can handle a little rough play." That was why they'd come to the planet. As if, all of a sudden, his screams no longer mattered, and his body heat were a public service, just because the generator can't help itself. When they finally let him go, the human was staggering, leaving a trail of blood and severed fingers behind him. After that came the bosses who asked for a minute, behind closed doors with the new human secretary. Neighbors who charged less rent if they cooperated. and when the complaint started, the phrases showed up in the argument. I understood something else, or I thought you agreed. Humanity recognized the pattern, and did what it usually does when someone tries to get smart and making them disappear isn't viable. Turn it into a structure, system, protocol. They didn't invent heat exchange, they made it contractual. Now the most you'd see in public was a thermal hug. For everything else, there was the private circuit. The car shuddered as it entered an older stretch of rail. Travis had a simple plan. Get home, open the door, collapse onto the cheap couch, eat something quick, and sleep. His bracelet vibrated, a reminder that the level C offer was still there, but the time to accept it was shrinking with the same force the train used to devour stations. He checked the payment the anonymous requester was offering one more time, and stopped pretending he was still deciding. He slid his finger and confirmed the assignment. The interface responded instantly, suggested route, meeting point, and the transfer needed to arrive on time. On the overhead screen in the car, the next stop alert blinked. Travis checked the address one more time. It matched. There was the building. From the street, the facade looked like a piece of polished stone with vertical lines, unadorned. Its main entrance was slightly recessed within a thick frame, with an infrared sensor and a discreet high-definition camera. The human stepped closer and raised his wrist for the scanner to read his bracelet. He walked down the indicated hallway. The ceiling on that floor was high, maybe 5 meters. The corridor was wide with smooth walls, and at the end, the apartment's heavy door matched the order's details. He gave the polished, heavy metal a couple of knocks, and for an instant, nothing happened. Then he heard footsteps on the other side. Heavy, measured, and the drag of something long. The lock made a sharp sound as it released, and the door opened. Her eyes, dark and still, pinned him in place. And in that fraction of a second, Travis felt the universe rewrite itself into a single fact. The label, Verified Anonymous Client, vanished. It was his boss. Kathari Vin Sarvos. She wasn't wearing her office clothes, the ones that made her an immaculate giant among human cubicles. She still held that straight posture, her scales clean. Travis tried to take a step back, but his body stayed fixed. She didn't blush. Her biology wouldn't allow it, but her breathing turned uneven as she drew her great ophidian tail closer to her body so it wouldn't show out in the hallway. Travis opened his mouth, and the only thing that came out was that office voice of his. "Ma'am? Director Vin?" "Travis." Kathari Vin said his name, the way you confirm a piece of information, and at the same time, can't believe it. The air between them grew dense. He felt the weight of his bracelet, as if the metal too understood what had just happened. His mind flashed to his reviews, the contract, the penalties. I can't pretend I'm here by mistake, he thought. The Sarkathari moved her head just slightly, checking whether anyone was coming down the hall. Then she looked back at him, lowered her voice, an unusual tone for management. "Come in." Travis didn't move. His mind searched for a clean exit. Cancel, refund, quit his office job. "I can," he started. She cut him off before the shame could turn into noise. "Come in," she repeated, and the word carried the weight of a clause. "No one needs to know." She took the door with both hands and closed it. The apartment's interior had functional order, designed for a large body. Open spaces, steady furniture, arranged so you could move without bumping into anything. It was just the two of them, and a silence broken only by the faint hum of the heater. "This," she said, letting the sentence hang for a moment, as if choosing words were a delicate operation. "This is still a service I requested and paid for in advance on the platform." Travis lifted his gaze slowly. "Yes, ma'am." And although both of them were ashamed in different ways, him for the obvious fact of his humanity, her for the unthinkable fact of finding him through that platform, neither of them took a step back. "But there's a provider conflict," Travis blurted, pulling himself together a little. Her dark pupils stayed locked on him. "I know," she said. Cathari Vin raised her own device, and the interface light painted her scales with a faint sheen. Her long fingers moved with surgical speed. Service Level C complete. Reclassified to Thermal Stabilization. Note, main service remains pending rescheduling. Travis's bracelet vibrated, logging the change. Cathari Vin walked to the couch with studied control. Where she sat, the furniture let out a soft, low creak, and her tail settled by instinct, dropping to the floor in a curve that served as a counterweight. Travis approached without hurry and set his bag on the nearby table. He didn't need anything inside it. The sealed supplies for Level C, condoms, lubricant, and sanitary cream, stayed there, untouched, like the rest of the main service now left pending. Now it was only giving heat, and his body was the only thing required. Whenever you're ready, he said. Director Vin watched him for a second, measuring. It wouldn't be a human hug. She leaned in, took him, and drew him against the lower part of her torso, where her mask could wrap around him without crushing him. Travis felt the contrast of her scales first. Cold, smooth, almost like polished stone, and then her real weight, an ache of pressure that forces you to remember you're still a small mammal held by an enormous predator. The couch creaked again, a little more this time as the mass redistributed. Breathe, he said softly, as if they were in an office meeting, and not in a situation that could ruin them both if it went wrong. Slow. Minutes passed. When the recommended time was up, Travis's bracelet vibrated with a gentle pulse. Cathari Vrin kept her hold. No, she started, and her voice came out lower than expected. Stay. He weighed his options with the speed of a reflex. Running was off the table. The door was behind her, and her scaled body filled the space like a living wall. Struggling. Impossible. Calling security belonged to the slow world of procedures. No one was going to appear in the apartment just because he pressed his bracelet. So he stayed still. Not out of obedience, but because the only real possibility was to wait for her to choose to let him go. They remained like that a few seconds longer, long enough to confirm the heat wasn't an illusion, and that embarrassment wasn't going to make her act badly. Then, with a controlled movement, she pulled back just enough for Travis to regain personal space. The couch behind them had been left with a faint pressure mark where she'd been, as if the furniture remembered the moment. The Tsar Cathari raised her device again. Her fingers moved with precision. He heard the confirmation sound. Thermal stabilization completed. Cathari Vin looked at him as if she were evaluating a report, but her eyes didn't have their usual hardness. There was something more dangerous. You didn't breach it entirely, she said, as if she were making a statement before a court. The reclassification was completed, but what do we do about the main service? Travis felt the weight of that word. I can refund you, he offered immediately, in full or partially, however you prefer. In his head, the entire calculation ran through. A bad client experience, losing his standing on the platform, the income that kept him comfortable, and her face the next day at the office. Your review, she let out. There it was, the threat. I don't want this to affect my profile, he said carefully. She released a slow exhale, the cold tremor now gone. I wouldn't be unfair. You acted professionally. Rating, positive. Internal note, Level C rescheduling pending approval with the provider. And now, the other problem. Travis knew which one she meant even before she said it. If this gets out... Cathari Vin didn't finish the sentence. He chose his words. The protocol already includes confidentiality. The Tsar Cathari held his gaze. I know, but I like exclusivity from you. In exchange, I can authorize improvements to your schedule with fewer late shifts and more days off, plus other benefits. Travis felt the sharp pang of temptation. Because he needed rest, and to raise his hourly earnings at the office. And yet, something in him hardened with the same dignity he'd used to bear her weight without complaint during the service. Cathari Vin Sarvos, let's not mix contracts. If I accept benefits in exchange for making you a regular client, it stops being work and becomes something else, something that could turn against both of us. Cathari Vin looked at him as if she were hearing an uncomfortable logic. Humans, always staring over the edge of the abyss before you walk. Because we've fallen before, Travis replied, and we learned to put up guardrails. A long silence followed. Then I'll do it the right way, she said at last. She didn't like his stance, but she understood it. Travis frowned. As your manager, I know you perform well, and your workload is sometimes excessive. I can justify adjustments. Don't take it as a favor. It'll be an administrative decision. Travis held her gaze, weighing it. If it's justifiable without any obligation to take you on, then I won't refuse. The Sarkathari nodded once. Travis glanced at his bracelet for a second. The partial payment had already been released for stabilization. The rest remained held for a pending Level C rescheduling. The system was still holding the balance. Cathari Vrin stood. Her height filled the space again. Her enormous tail slid behind her, reclaiming that rigorous posture. You can go, she said. He picked up his bag and adjusted the strap. For a moment, the discomfort tried to come back. How do you say goodbye to your manager after being a thermal anchor in her living room? The answer was simple. Travis dipped his head, a brief, respectful gesture. Good night, Director Vin. She looked at him for a moment, and her voice came out more weighted than she meant it to. Good night, Travis. He walked to the door. When he opened it, the outer hallway met him with that restrained austerity of wealthy buildings. And as he moved away from the apartment, Travis thought about the one thing that kept this job from devouring him. Despite alien pride, workplace hierarchy, and chance that could be cruel at times, the human heat protocol.